call the August 18 Reno County Planning Commission meeting to order. Staff, will you call the roll?
Strand. Here. Schaefer. Here. Seltzer. Macklin.
Here.
Jorns. Yes. Martin. Here. Jurgensen.
Here. Thank you for coming tonight. We've got a full agenda to get through this evening, so we'll just get right after it. In your packet, I trust that you've had a chance to review the minutes from the July 21 meeting. The chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. So moved to what?
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from July 21. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes approved. We'll move right into business. To ensure the rights of all parties of interest and to provide an opportunity for each party to address the Planning Commission in an orderly manner, the Planning Commission will follow the fact-finding procedure which is outlined in the handout in each chair. Your attention to this procedure is appreciated. If recommendation is made tonight, that recommendation will be based upon the record of information presented to the Planning Commission. The recommendation will be forwarded to the County Commissioners. At the County Commissioners' request, they may require the preliminary plat be approved prior to permitting the applicant to file the final plat. The Planning Commission recommendation on the preliminary plat will only go to the County Commissioners at their request. If required, the preliminary plat will be accompanied by a summary of proceedings before the Planning Commission at its public hearing, along with the report and recommendations of the county planner, letters, informal petitions, and other information constituting the record of proceedings provided to the Planning Commission before and during the public hearing. If the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to approve the preliminary plat after tonight's public hearing, the applicant may begin the process of submitting the final plat. I will now formally open the public hearing regarding case number, actually, we've already formally opened.
It's already been opened. Yeah,
Yep, we've already formally opened, so case number 2022-05, that concerns a preliminary plat subdivision request by Nicholas and Danielle Adams, engineer MKEC Engineering Incorporated. The Renwick subdivision is a proposed 6-lot residential subdivision located approximately 600 feet east of the intersection of South Willison Road and East Silver Lake Road. It was tabled on the July 21 meeting. I would entertain a motion to take it off the table.
I move to remove from the table. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of taking the case number 2022-05 off the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It is now an active discussion. Have any of the Planning Commission members had any outside contacts regarding this case?
No.
No.
Do any Planning Commission members have any conflict of interest in this case?
No.
Okay. Will the applicant please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record? You have 10 minutes to present your case. Additional time may be allotted to the applicant at the discretion of the chair. Planning Commission members may request clarification at the end of your presentation or may have some questions.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Brian Lindeback. I work for MKEC Engineering, Inc., 411 North Webb Road, Wichita, Kansas, on behalf of the owners and applicants. Today before you is, as you've described, is a 6-lot subdivision. It's a rural type subdivision with wells and proposed, as well as septic systems proposed. It is a fairly straightforward case in my mind, in that we've got the subdivision regs and zoning regs that we've complied with to the greater extent. There's a slight adjustment to that, as noted in the packet, but we've taken a little bit extra time on this case, as you know from deferring it from the previous meeting, in that there's some unique challenges that this property has as far as drainage and And the Corps of Engineers is concerned with regard to the wetlands, and it's all mentioned in the staff report. But so we took a little extra time to make sure that we vetted out all those concerns in advance, so that when we, if we do get approved tonight, that we could take this plat to the final plat stage without much change at all. I've brought a copy of the plat. Of course, you guys have copies as well, but if there's anything I need to point out to you or bring to the attention of the public, feel free to let me know, and I can see what I can do to assist in bringing out any concerns with regard to the technicalities of the subdivision regulations and zoning regulations. The lots are greater than 3 acres or greater. I think that's in large part, the main concern of some of the neighboring properties is that there's concern about the number of lots. I think it's a very small development in my mind, and I don't see there being a whole lot of concern with meeting the subdivision and zoning regulations is related to the size of the lots. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
there is an existing pond on the west side of your driveway, your entryway driveway, which ends in a cul-de-sac. The boundaries of the lot seems to divide the pond between lots 1 and 2. Who is that? Will that kind of remain a public area, or who will end up owning the pond, or will it be divided between lots 1 and 2?
There would be shared ownership of that drainage pattern, yes.
Can you mandate that or describe that in the contract sales?
Certainly, and
property boundaries?
And as needed, there would be maybe an additional set of covenants that would be related to that item, but that would be a private matter that the developer would put in place.
What's the character of that pond? Is it deep enough it's not deep enough to swim in. It would be, are there fish in it? Would there be fishing, or would there be people with paddle boats or something? Is it just a 1.5 foot deep, or is it enough for people with paddle boats to recreate? Or
It would be more of a recreation / an amenity for the neighboring lots. So
you set your picnic table by it, and that's about it? Or?
I think that's it's not that sizable of a body of water, but yeah, it's an existing feature that we'll be maintaining. There'll be some slight adjustments to some of the grades out there when it comes time to put a road in, if indeed we get to that point.
And did we satisfy the frontage requirement on, I think it was lot 3 that was a little bit short on the
Yes,
frontage requirement?
fixed that. It's
Mark, you're happy with changes on that?
Yes.
Or I'll ask you later when
There's a little,
thank you.
a little depiction in your packet, the very last page there.
Yeah, we were a little bit short there at one time.
Yep.
Yeah.
As far as the ponds are concerned, you don't have see any potential future issues of just doing a covenant type arrangement versus putting them in a reserve where you don't have the issue of shared ownership of a body of water.
What we've done in other subdivisions throughout the area is we've placed those into reserves, but then when you contract to purchase the reserve, in this case, maybe a half or a part of the pond would be sold with the lot as part of, so that's an option, but I think the preference would be just to sell it as the entirety of the lot. Certainly, we're going to have provisions for the placement of the house, and there's going to be a discussion a little bit about the well placement and the sewer placement, and so there's I think just for the practicality of this type of development, just leaving it all as one lot would be the simplest and most straightforward.
Be the simplest, but it's the best solution, I guess, is my question, because you look at, with current owners, maybe they might understand, but then future owners, would that be conveyed to them that, they only own half a pond? And,
Yeah,
how do I keep the fish on my side of the pond versus your side of the pond? And, this kind of issue.
Those are neighborly concerns that will have to be dealt with, as, you know, but, you know, we'll have property lines delineated. When they purchase the property, they'll know where those property lines are, and just like many developments, so.
So if you did look at going to a reserve though, would that impair your lot sizes or anything?
What I would plan to do is if it's required that we put them into a reserve, is we'd have separate reserves where the reserve would be, let's say, Reserve A, or Reserve 1 or whatever. It coincides with the ownership of Lot 1. And then, you know, the next lot over would have its own reserve, and it would coincide with the ownership of that adjoining lot. And that, we have done that in other projects, and it works just fine. It just creates another tax parcel, and sometimes those tax parcels get merged together, and then it's almost as though there's no difference from the reserve or the lot. So it's really it's kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is it may be irrelevant at the end of the day. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the wetland issue. Can you refresh my memory on what, if any, concerns the Corps of Engineers had about that?
Yeah, the wetlands there are wetlands. We've determined there are wetlands on the property, and in order to not disturb the wetlands, because that would be harmful, and there'd be, you know, issues with that would, you know, have more implications. So the thought is that we're going to keep these wetlands in, you know, set aside from, you know, development of streets or houses and things like that. So
does that require some kind of permitting from the Corps of Engineers, or?
no, they're not. Our drainage engineer has been working with them, and they don't anticipate requiring any permitting because of the type of layout that we've come to. So that's the current plan as it sits.
So as time goes on, what protects that area that they're designated as wetlands?
We'll have to have an agreement with, you know, the owners will then need to share that information with the buyers of those lots, and that would be a way to convey that information. And then we've got the proceedings here that we've got a lot of records on file here that the county is, of course, aware of, that they could help share that information if asked.
And the source of the water in the ponds, how is it maintained?
It's natural water that comes through the drainage systems, and there's, I guess the question you may be alluding to, do we plan to pump water into the ponds? I don't believe there's any plans to pump water into the ponds.
And what about the bank of the ponds? Any provisions in your development for maintaining the pond bank, or can it be turned into cattails or whatever? Or
With regard to the platting process, we don't have requirements as far as that goes, but that'll be something at the discretion of the owner to make sure how that pond edge is maintained, whether it's a rock line, or if it's some sort of riparian vegetation. So it'll be at the discretion of the owner to help guide the shape of what that looks like.
So if I'm understanding that the pond is part of the drainage for the greater area, but as it's currently platted, the maintenance and repairs in the future are going to be the responsibility of the individual property owner.
That's right. It won't be the responsibility of the county. It'll be the responsibility of the individual owners.
So what happens hypothetically, you go 30, 40 years in the future and you have like a rain event that causes some erosion or a dam breach or something like that, and you have an owner that either can't or won't step up and repair it?
I think those will be concerns that will be a greater concern beyond just certainly there'll be some neighbors that will probably have some concerns about that, and I think at that point perhaps the county could step in and provide some guidance for some of that. But we can, we can certainly, if there's some provisions that you'd like to make, we can certainly be open to ideas on what your thoughts are there.
So, I mean, once the lots are sold to the individuals, so, basically, if the planning commission were to approve this, you plat, whatnot, you go and develop it, lots are sold. And then 10 years down the road, you have the issue he's alluding to where, somebody doesn't maintain one side of the pond and the other guy does, and the other, it looks like, looks pretty bad for everybody else on the side that doesn't maintain. The county can't do anything about that. That's a civil issue.
Yeah, it could be that they establish a
So
homeowners.
you have neighbor suing neighbor, basically.
It could be that they establish a homeowners association that
Could be,
addresses
but Are they
that.
planning to?
I think that's something we can take a look at here and ask our client and see if that's something they've explored.
Got another question on the water analysis that was done on the test well. It looks, you got water, I'll say that much. Do you feel that's representative of what the water would be like for the entire development?
At this point, yes.
Because there's, right now I'm seeing it's got some chloroform bacterial condition is unacceptable, and a lot of the other levels are higher than are, normally acceptable on that, which indicates it's not really great potable water, So, I mean, and as I understand, it's not fed by an aquifer or anything, it's just drainage, so there's no guarantee that those wells are gonna endure, so to speak. Is that pretty much correct?
Yeah, I think that's in line with, the findings of the environmental test, yeah.
Under more pleasant atmospheric conditions, when it rains once in a while, is that kind of a shallow underflow area? Would homeowners potentially be wise to not put basements under their potential houses, or is the water underflow level sufficiently low that you can probably do a basement without concern of having it seep in?
In our drainage report, we have recommended or required minimum pad elevations. Just given the size of the lots, there's a lot of options for placement of the house and with regard to the placement of the well and with regard to the placement of the septic system. So there's a lot of options. There's obviously a lot of grade here. So we'll be working closely with the developer to ensure what they do build is going to be protected and well-suited for the situation. Sometimes it may be that the opening needs to be, the lowest opening of the house needs to be elevated, given the current conditions. So those are things that we'll work with the owner and make sure that there's safety involved, and so that they're protected in regards to any litigation regarding flooding matters.
Are you saying a basement could be workable, could be?
It just depended on where, the placement of the house. I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is there's a lot of variables here, a lot of change in elevation. There's certainly a lot of flood concerns here, so we're going to be very hypersensitive to helping see that process through for the betterment of the client and their pursuits to develop the property.
Was the drainage report completed prior to the latest changes in the road and center line?
It was started before that, and we've finalized it with the submittal of the preliminary plat in its current form.
Okay, so the final data we saw was with this current.
Yes, that's correct.
I guess I'd like to turn my attention from just talking about water to the roadway. I'm interested in the surface that you plan for the roadway, and how is the entrance into the pieces of property, the different pieces of property made off of the roadway? Is there a culvert there, or?
Yeah, there'd be it's anticipated to be a gravel or a non-paved surface. Certainly, they could pave it if they so chose. but there'll be entrances with sufficient pipes underneath the entrances to allow for that drainage to pass through.
But the roadway that's shown on the plat is, what's the surface on it?
That's what I was saying, it'd be a gravel, non-paved road at this time, but certainly they could choose to pave it if they wanted to.
The homeowners could do that.
Or the developer, yes.
Who would be responsible to maintain that then? Does that become a township responsibility? Mark is nodding yes, thank you.
It is a public street right of way, so, yeah.
Does the township have any input on that?
Just that it's built to township standards.
And we'll, as this moves forward, if it does move forward, we'll certainly be working to make sure all the engineering plans are put in place to meet all those standards. That's what we do. That's our bread and butter for civil engineering.
And when you say gravel, are you talking about crushed limestone, or are you talking about river gravel, sand pit gravel, or?
We're going to meet the requirements of the county's regulations when it comes to a non-paved street. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that it's going to be built to a standard that it's going to be robust. So.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If there's no other questions, we'll now hear from the planning staff.
Mark Von Atchen, County Planner. So to help orient the commission, we're located just east of the intersection of Silver Lake Road and Wilson Road, and that's just a little bit northeast of the top part of Cheney Lake. We're looking at these two taxing parcels right here. There's actually three parcels that the owner actually has possession of right now. One of them has just been combined into roughly a 20-acre piece, and then this one's a 10-acre piece. Surrounded by agricultural land. This area right in here used to be a total of 8 lots, used to be an 80-acre parcel of ground, and it was divided without going through the subdivision process, but divided into 8 10-acre lots. Just to the north, across the street, is a residential subdivision. There are 11 lots in there, so each one of those lots is 1 acre in size and has the potential of having one home site on each one of those lots. This is an aerial photo, kind of a blow-up area. We're looking at this area in here. You can see the 2 ponds. Here is that residential subdivision. I would add that the residential subdivision does not have a house on every single one of those lots, but it does have the potential to accommodate a house on each one of those 11 lots. Obviously, the lake is down in here, so you can kind of see where we're at. Silver Lake Road runs east-west, and Wilson Road runs north-south. A little bit closer view of the property. Mainly we have residential houses on the south side, residential house here, residential house over here, and so on down here. This would be a storage building that has probably living quarters inside of it as well. So you're looking at residential houses all along the south side of the road as well. 10-acre lots on average. This would be this copy of the subdivision plat that you have in your possession here. As I said, the property is zone R1, which is our rural residential zoning district. Requirements for the R1 zoning district are the following. Minimum of 3 acres exclusive of the road right-of-way. Have a lot width to lot depth ratio of no more than 3:1. Have a minimum road frontage of 165 feet and a minimum depth of 330 feet. Each one of those lots meets those requirements. That is the only thing that you are looking at with our zoning regulations. Nothing else in the zoning regulations apply right now. As long as it meets those standards right there, from this point forward, you're looking at compliance with the subdivision regulations only. Next, we'll probably talk about some of the features of the plat here. I'll kind of help you a little bit. And I do have some errors in here that I will highlight and bring to your attention and help correct. As you know, this report's been written several times since it's been tabled, and there's a lot of revisions. I tried to catch a lot of them, and I unfortunately failed in my attempt here. First thing we'll do is we'll talk about what we call access control. The subdivision has access control along all of Silver Lake Road, and what access control means is that nobody that owns those two lots on the north side along Silver Lake will be able to get a driveway permit from the county. And so if they purchase, lot 1 up on the top, they will not be able to get a driveway along Silver Lake Road to say access the back portion of the property. We have complete control over that, with the exception of the new road that is proposed to be constructed. In my report, I said Silver Lake Drive, it's actually Silver Lake Road, so there's your first error in my report. The second thing I mentioned is that the subdivision does have 10-foot utility easements along Silver Lake, along the east side, and then along the south side boundaries of the subdivision. That will be for the utility companies to run their utilities to serve all of these lots. If there are other utilities that are necessary, that are determined by the utility companies, then that would be by a separate private agreement and instrument with that private property owner. But we have 3 platted utility easements. Those easements are 10-foot wide in total. And so that will give the utility companies the right to run their lines and their utilities down those areas. The next one is, as you may have guessed, that the health department has been evaluating each one of these lots for wastewater systems and wells, and I think Darcy will speak to that as part of my report a little bit later on, but just so you know that they have been out on site and they have done soil evaluations on each one of these lots to help, ensure that, it's possible that we can get a system and a well on each one of those lots. The next error in my report, I said that the results of the test wells have not been turned in to me or the health department. That is, of course, an error. You do have a copy of the test well results in your packet, so that has been turned in. The next thing is the road. The proposed road will be a dedicated public township road. It'll meet their minimum standards, which is a gravel. We would inspect the road as the county to ensure that it meets those standards here. Probably would not encourage it to be asphalt or concrete, just because that's difficult for the township to maintain. But the minimum standard would be the dirt road, 70-foot right-of-way to right-of-way type of road with a cul-de-sac, on the end for turnaround purposes. The next error in the report is I had mentioned that that Lot 2 is eligible for a lot split. Due to the latest revision in the subdivision plat, Lot 2 is now not eligible for a lot split. It is now below 6 acres, and so the owner of that lot would not be able to go ahead and split that land and get an additional 7th house on that property. I might add, it might be difficult anyway to put another house out there due to the wetlands that are on the north side of that lot anyway, so there might be some concerns on that end. But just so you know, it's less than 6 acres right now, and so it will not be eligible for a lot split under the current zoning. There is no floodplain on the property, even though there are wetlands and ponds on that property. There is no identified floodplain on the property right now. The cul-de-sac that you see at the bottom, it meets the standard length and it meets the standard radius. It is in compliance with our requirements for that. However, the block length does not. You might notice in our regulations we have a maximum block length of 1,320 feet. The whole length of this development is about 1,335 feet, so it does not comply with our regulations there. However, in the regulations, we do have the ability to recommend a variation of certain regulations, and so my recommendation to this board would be that you grant a variation of the block requirement there. It doesn't really make sense to have two of those lots, say, be identified as a separate block versus just having everything under one block. Since the county does not employ engineers, the drainage report was reviewed by a third-party engineering company that was hired by the county to review their report from MKEC. Their analysis of that drainage report, in your packet offered many suggestions and comments, but I think the key takeaway from this board should be that the runoff from the site will either remain the same or actually be reduced as part of this development, both pre and post development. And so there should be not any kind of drainage concerns after this subdivision is completely developed out. The analysis of that drainage report also confirms that the drainage appears to follow accepted standards for stormwater runoff calculations. We've talked a little bit about other permits that may be necessary. You've heard some discussion tonight about the Army Corps of Engineers and the concerns with the wetlands. They're hoping to stay under those requirements so they do not have to have an Army Corps engineer report and permit from that. The other one is the Kansas Department of Health and Environment will probably require an erosion control permit because they'll be disturbing more than 1 acre of ground, and so they'll have some standards that they have to follow if this subdivision is developed. And then the last permit that may be required will be from the Kansas Division of Water Resources for water appropriations due to the ponds out there. Probably next talk a little bit about some of the issues that we identify with this plat as we've gone through this process for several months in reviewing that. Mr. Jones, you had mentioned Lot 3 out there. Here's a blow-up of Lot 3. Our regulations, as you know, require that we have at least 165 feet of road frontage. You can see up here, it was only at 122 feet. What I would note, though, is that our regulations do say that when you're on a cul-de-sac, you can count this building setback line as your road frontage requirement. And so I had MKEC give me proof that at the building setback line, it's at 165.23 feet. So that lot is in compliance with our requirements for the minimum road frontage. We did talk about the issue of having some of these ponds and other wetlands put in reserve areas. We did have discussions with the owner and his representatives, way back when we first started looking at developing of this. We suggested that they do put them in a reserve. Our regulations do not require that they be put in a reserve. And after that discussion, we left it up to the owner, and he has ultimately decided that he thinks he can handle the management of those wetlands through his private agreements with the people that would be looking at purchasing those lots. And so, staff did not require those reserves or push it further than that. We just made that suggestion. We felt like it'd be maybe a little bit easier. You did hear some discussion about, we would have to make sure that those types of reserves are owned by all of the property owners, so therefore that area would not go up on the tax sale. Because when people, if they would sell that reserve area, then people would have an expectation that maybe they could buy and do something with that reserve, and when they find out they can't do anything with it, then they'll just let it go, and it'll be constantly on the tax sale. And so we would have done something with that, but in this case we don't have to worry about it because of the fact that it's going to be actually owned by the person that owns the lot. It should be noted again, and it was kind of discussed, that the county is not going to enforce any disputes with these ponds or anything. So you talked about fish being on one side or the other. That's not something that the county is going to get involved in. That's going to be a private civil matter.
Somebody gets the duck.
There you go, something like that. I would mention, with this, that, a reserve area, could have some negative impacts on the placement of buildings, in this case, wastewater systems and or wells, because, if you have a reserve area identified on your lot, then those types of systems cannot go within that reserve area. So there could be some concerns on that end, and potentially some advantages of not having it in a reserve area, especially on the building permit side. As you can tell, the health department has been heavily involved in this proposal throughout this process here, and I would say after my report, I would like to invite Darcy up to kind of give you guys an overview of what she's found out on the wastewater and well side of things. So in my report, I tried to be pretty thorough. I realize it's pretty complicated. We've had a lot of issues we've had to work through here. I did not read my whole report or anything, but is there anything that you would like to me to discuss further, with this?
Question, maybe, I don't know if you can answer or not, but okay, we're not looking at a reserve area on the ponds, wetlands, whatever. So they're gonna be, basically, somebody's gonna own half of a pond, in essence. If, say we go into a drought like we're in now, some of that dries up, and he decides he wants to come in and dump a bunch of fill dirt in there to basically change that pond, is there anything to stop him?
Well, if that pond is part of the Army Corps wetlands, then he would have to get a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers to be able to bring fill into a pond. On the county level, no, there's nothing. We don't have stormwater management regulations, erosion control regulations, and so on the county end, there's nothing that we would do.
So unless it was part of the designated wetlands area, he
Yes.
could go in and fill in his half of the pond if he wanted to, which would affect the drainage.
Yes.
Yes.
Did we have any documents that delineated the potential wetland? Is there something in there? Or they just-
There is a map on there, as far as like a legal description, no, but there is a general map that kind of shows those wetlands.
That area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's that. But as far as like an actual legal description delineation, no.
I was just looking for a general.
Okay.
So it doesn't look like it includes the pond. Yeah. One of them kind of creeps.
This one is right against this pond.
It's right against, like this one here, if they were to come in.
Yeah. Pond 2 is, two or three lots,
Yeah, I think that's the one that has the big
yeah,
split.
it's 2 lots.
Yeah. I guess pond one is split too, and
Yeah, they're
they're
split.
it's all kind of cut up.
Okay. Pond 1 is bordered by a wetlands, part of it is at least.
Mark, on this, this colored map, I guess the green lines are the redesigned road to avoid the wetlands? Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Strand, yes. And so in the black, you see the original design of the road, and when it was discovered that they were disturbing too many acres of the wetlands, or too many acres being about 2/10 of an acre, so it wasn't a lot. But when they discovered that that would require a Corps permit, they thought better of that and decided they would redesign the road. So yes, the green line that you would see would be the road redesigned.
So the green line, the west green line cuts into a little bit of the blue of Pond 2. Is there anything in the
Can I have a little correction? I mean, the green line isn't exactly what you have seen, what you have shown on the final, or the plat here. It's a little,
It's not.
it's a little different. What you have here is a little different than that green line. I think that's important to note.
Is there a 70-foot right-of-way between the point of Pond 2 and Wetlands 1 there, where enough room to get a road through?
Yes.
I just looking at the, if the green line represents 70-foot frontage, it doesn't look like there's enough width at that, where it pinches together there.
Just so we're clear, the green line was simply a sketch, just used to help illustrate the problem.
Right.
And this is the solution, the preliminary plat, what you see is the solution to that problem.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna finish saying is, it's just, this is just kind of a little schematic showing kind of where the road was. It's just kind of overlaid onto that, but the plat is your official document.
The plat doesn't show the wetland areas.
No.
Okay, thank you.
In passing a moment ago, you said there might be some issue with KDHE, and you mentioned KDHE.
If this is approved, then,
Flesh that out for me again. I'm old and forgetful.
so if this plat is ultimately approved and they begin construction, the rules with KDHE are, if you disturb more than an acre of ground at any one time, then you would need to have like an erosion control permit, which could be like silt fence to prevent runoff of dirt running onto other people's property or running into a wetland area or the lake, for example. And so they will have to get that permit through KDHE.
Now, who would get that? The developers or the landowners or the property owners or
All the above.
all the above?
All the above.
Is that a costly and a difficult, challenging process, or
Probably not, no.
show up and pay a fee and?
It's a substantial report that we put together and submit to KDHE on how we're going to handle the erosion and that. So there's quite a bit of effort put into it, but it's not, we do those things every day, and that's just part of developing property. It's a kind of just a step in the process.
It's not really a health, KDHE is Department of Health and Environment, not really a personal health issue, it's more just a.
It's an iterative process. This is just the very beginning of the iterative process of developing property. There's, of course, building a street and all these other things that go along. So that's just one of the steps that it takes to get to the finish line.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Mark.
I would just conclude my comments, and I'd stand for more questions, that staff would recommend approval of this request for the preliminary plat. 3 conditions I've attached to it. Some of them, may or may not be applicable to things based off of your decision, but eventually I would like to have the owner provide, me a copy of all state and federal permits to make sure that they're in compliance with those regulations. Revise and then resubmit the preliminary drainage study to indicate the drainage easements will not be established for a 100-year storm event. Something internal between me and the applicant, there was a little bit of confusion on the drainage report between us and our engineer that we hired and them. We were a little bit confused on that. It turned out that they were designing stuff to the 100-year storm, and that needs to be revised and taken out. And so we had a little bit of confusion on the culvert sizes as well that were going in. Third one is if there are any changes based off of your recommendation or so, then we would want them to submit to me a revised preliminary plat with those changes prior to making application for the final plat. Lastly, I'd say that we sent letters to 14 different property owners per our regulations, which require that. And then we had 7 citizens respond against that subdivision preliminary plat. And all those comments, as well as additional comments that came in since I mailed you the packet, but they're on your desk or emailed to you, and they're here for your review. So with that, I would conclude my presentation. If you don't have further questions for me, I'd maybe invite Darcy to come up to give you an overview of the wastewater and well part of things.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Hi, Darcy, Reno County Health Department, Environmental Health. Environmental health staff have been out to the property twice and met with the owner. We did wastewater soil profiles on every single lot, and some lots had 2 profiles. So the purpose of a profile, for a soil profile, is we're going to excavate an area, analyze the layers of soil or shale or water that was encountered, and then help him determine or give him ideas of the type of systems that would be lawfully permitted and allowed to go in that area. So we initially went out there and met with Mr. Adams, and we did some lots, and then as the property lines changed and adjusted, we went back out and did rearranged and moved some things around here and there a little bit. Also in these evaluations, we evaluated each lot for the placement of a well. So that way we could figure out, and we also talked about proposed house sites. That can be variable, Mr. Adams' idea compared to a buyer's idea of where a house site would be. It might be slightly different, and I told you about that a little bit in my report, that these are evaluations to see if we can actually get a well in and a wastewater system, and yes, we can do that. There are a few lots that will not qualify for a lagoon. Just based off of, they cannot meet the county setback. As we worked with MKEC and as the wetlands developed and the areas were identified and pond areas were identified, we also recognized those in environmental setting, and we established a 50-foot barrier around those through GIS. So we were able to get their files electronically, put it on the county system, look at it, see what we've been working on out there, and determine that even with a 50-foot buffer, which would be state compliant with Bulletin 4-2, we were still able to get wastewater systems and wells on there. There might be some limitations in the future of driveway placement or a size of driveway, but that's not what staff was there for. We were there to make sure that, yes, we could get a well on there and we can get a wastewater system on there. The owner has been very adamant the entire time that he is not interested in lagoon placement, so not one site was evaluated for a potential lagoon by us at all. We look specifically, could it be for a septic system or an enhanced or an aerobic treatment system the entire time, and that was the owner's preference. So as these property lines changed and the wetlands areas changed, I provided maps. Mark has those maps of where we actually did soil profiles and where we thought of proposed well sites, and we can still meet all the setbacks and get something in there nicely. I have looked at, the water has been a question, right? And just keep in mind that the county does not regulate water quality unless it is a substantial, significant health risk. And so I have seen the water test results. And if you compare those results with the national drinking water standards, you are going to find that if you have coliform bacteria, you can disinfect it. I'm not surprised to see a bacteria load in a newly drilled well. It's going to be a very common thing. And you have to also keep in mind that these are contaminants that you're seeing. It's a screenshot, a snap in time. So as a drought occurs or rainfall occurs, these contaminants are going to fluctuate. They're going to go up and down. But people can put on water treatment systems as well if they would like to on their wells and their water systems to take out some of these impurities. So overall, just know that we can get wastewater systems and wells out there for each lot.
Question, Darcy.
Yeah.
Driving by the property, it's a fairly low piece of property. They're not designing for a 100-year flood, but
Sure.
where I live on the other side of the lake, basically my property runs along Silver Lake on the other side of the lake.
Right.
And, we've had issues there from, rain hydraulic pressure coming up from the ground. And we're higher, I think, than they are over there. The second year we were out there, we had like 18 inches of rain, within 2 or 3 months. And there was a lot of flooding and everything. Do you think that the placement of wells and septic systems could be done so those would not flood
So
in the event of something like that?
Sure. There are low areas and drainage areas that we accounted for when we were out on each site. And of course, we have to meet those setbacks and continually to stay away from there. So you can place, and we do require that wells are over a 50-foot drainage area. So I can only meet the minimums of the code. I can't predict an 18-inch rainfall and what's going to happen. We did identify, and Mr. Adams is here as well, when we were on site, we did see some water percolating up through some of the shell that was there, and we would follow the state code, and you would have to have a 4-foot separation from the bottom of your wastewater system with a conventional system. Now, keeping that in mind, you are allowed by the county, you can put in aerobic treatment systems that provide effluent qualities that are better than drinking water standards, and you can actually get a little bit closer of some dosing. So on the lateral field, so if somebody would like to pay for dosing and aerobic treatment system, or if that's their covenant, that's something that they would enforce, but that is also another viable system that would work out there.
Most of the potential systems will end up, or have the possibility of being septic systems with lateral fields.
Or an aerobic treatment, yes, or an aerobic treatment with the lateral field.
My famous question always is, when the first lateral field fails, if it ever does, do you have room for reconstruction of new lateral fields.
Exactly. So when each lot is laid out, they have to go through the building permit process, and environmental health staff are involved with Mark in that process. And we do look at their site plans, and we do determine where is the next one going to be. Where are we going to put that? It's required by the county code that you have reserve areas identified, even in the sanitation code for a replacement wastewater system.
You can make that work.
We can make that.
There's room for the owner to make that work.
Depending on the house size. So, I mean, there's just a lot of variables, sheds, driveways, I don't know yet.
The potential homeowner, builder then would need to take that into consideration.
Oh, yes, and we would too.
Replacing his house.
Correctly, yes, right, you're correct.
Thank you.
Likewise with wastewater, you're going for a contingency plan. How about for the fresh water, the wells? Do you have a contingency plan kind of in mind or in place for if a well should fail?
We do not have a contingency plan for water wells and at all. The county is not into, we don't regulate yield, we don't do any delineations and determine if how long this well is going to be active or good. So the county would not have any regulations on that.
Didn't know if you had little reserve areas said, okay, if it did fail, it could go here.
Right, we do think a little bit ahead. I understand you're saying just as far as placement.
Right.
We do think ahead on where the second one could go. It's a lot easier to place a second well than it is a second wastewater system.
Right.
You gotta find water.
You gotta find water.
You gotta find water.
Gotta find water. Well, in your opinion, hang on just a second, Harley. In your opinion, is there enough water to support 6 family households there?
I couldn't provide an opinion on that. I do not know the yield, I would not know.
From the
There's too
test
many
well
variables to
they
even
drilled,
know.
did they get any yield out of it as far as flow?
I do not have a recorded yield. I don't know if the developer has one. That I have not had one reported to me. And I wouldn't, it wouldn't be of any of my concern. I don't regulate
Yeah, I
that.
understand,
Yeah,
I understand. I was just curious whether or not there was any flow information on that test well as to how much water it was putting out.
I haven't seen a report on it.
Where was the test well drilled in this?
It was drilled on Lot 2. That would be down at the bottom on the left.
Not in the pond.
Not in the pond, correct.
Plenty of water there.
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to speak up. My name is Tom Forster. I've kind of been helping Nick and Danielle Adams with this as I've,
You want to come up to the podium?
How about you? Any other questions?
Hang on just a second. Any other questions for Darcy? Darcy, thank you.
Okay.
There might be something that comes up.
Okay, not a problem, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't mind stepping to the podium. State your name.
yeah, sorry. My name is Tom Forster. I'm with Reno Real Estate out of Haven, Kansas. I've been helping Nick and Danielle Adams on this. I'm a personal friend of theirs, and I'm involved in a big housing development as a part owner in Wichita. So they kind of approached me and asked me to help them get this going. And I've been working with MKC and with Mark and with Darcy. I actually did the request to get the test wells done. I don't really have a written report of the yield, but the well owner said they hit water a little bit before 40 feet. They started hitting water and they went down to 60 feet. And they actually drilled 2 test wells out there. The owners had one of them cased and one of them they did not. They just went down to see where they were going to hit water. The water quality test, that water came out of the well that was cased. That well's still out there cased as it's going to be part of a lot, and it's going to be an active well on one of those lots if this is approved. The yield was about 20 gallons a minute out of those wells. So the well drilling company was Winter Well Drilling out of Mays, Kansas, and they said in their opinion, based on those 2 wells, there's more than sufficient water out there at this time. And the test was done approximately about a month ago. And they said at that time, even with the heat we're having and stuff, they felt like there was way more than sufficient enough water on that site to support 6 lots.
So it went down 60 feet, the cased well.
Say that again?
The cased well went down 60 feet?
Yeah, they stopped at 60 feet and cased it because they said there was gobs of water down there. So they felt like that was a sufficient enough depth to go and not have to worry about running out of water. So. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment in the case? You have 5 minutes to comment. Please come forward to the podium one at a time and state your name and address for the record for commenting. Audience members are only permitted to address the Planning Commission from the podium. Audience members are permitted only one at a time at the podium. In the interest of time, if you agree with the comments previously made by the audience members, please don't repeat the comments. Simply state that you agree with the previous and then present new information if you have it. Statements and questions should only be directed to the Planning Commission, not to the applicant or staff. The Planning Commission may choose not to answer questions or engage with the public. Questions regarding the application can be asked to the Planning Commission and answered by the applicant during the rebuttal phase of this public hearing. So if there's anyone that has any comment to this case, please step forward now.
Hello, my name is Shelby Hendrickson. I'm here today on behalf of me and my husband Paul Hendrickson to oppose the proposed Renwick subdivision. I have lived in Reno County for a little over 6 years, but my husband has owned and lived at our property for about 9 years. Our property sits catty corner to the proposed subdivision at the northwest corner of that intersection. When my husband purchased the property, he chose our home because of the appeal that rural living brings. We enjoy the space between our neighbors, the peace and quiet, and the slower pace of life. We have and we continue to invest in our property as we intend to live at this residence permanently. Our children are established or will be established when they're old enough in the Haven School District, which is just north of us, about 8 miles. We've made many local friends and we absolutely love the place that we call home. The proposed subdivision would certainly impact our quality of living and negatively affects our future plans. A subdivision in a rural community causes an obstructed view of the countryside. It impacts the value of nearby properties, and it places a strain on local infrastructure. A subdivision, in my opinion, belongs in a suburban area. What really stuck out to me when considering the impact of the proposed subdivision were the results of the flooding study that was completed by JEO. The study points out that the risk of water overtopping onto neighboring land as more buildings in a small area means less land to absorb the water, especially in a low-lying area. JEO appeared to have major concern with regard to flooding and made multiple other recommendations. They also highlighted a concern that was related to the integrity of the pond embankment. The land for the proposed subdivision is much flatter and low-lying than the nearby properties. Without having an exact elevation level for this property or for my own, I'll just kind of describe the area briefly. The Rollman property, it sits up on a hill on the south side of the highway. So this would be the south side of Silver Lake Road. It sits up on a hill with the Metcalf property just west and south of this, but it's also on a hill. The proposed subdivision sits at the bottom of the hill on the south side of the highway. The Hendrickson property, which is my property, it sits on the north side of the highway, sitting a little higher than the proposed subdivision, but lower than the Rollman and Metcalf properties. And I share this because we have had water issues on our property for years. We had to put on guttering with drainage out to the ditches to keep water away from the house. We've had to insulate the crawl space. We can't have a basement because of water. And we utilize 2 sump pumps that run continuously just to keep water out because the water table is so high. Now imagine having 6 properties sitting on land that is lower than my property, and imagine all of them having a similar setup to mine. Where does that water go? There doesn't seem to be enough surrounding land to absorb it, especially when you consider the possibility of 6 homes, 6 shops or storage buildings, and 6 septic systems. The 2 ponds that would be taking up a lot of area that used to have that soil to absorb the rain, that soil is not going to be there anymore. And that soil was very poor at absorbing that rainwater. So in considering JEO's expert opinion, as well as the difficulties we've experienced on our own property, My hope is that each of you would take my concerns seriously so that neighboring homes won't have to pay the price for something that could have been avoided altogether. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Hello.
My name is Angela Valentine. I live at 9317 East Silver Lake Road. I'm here on behalf of my husband, Brian Rollman, and myself. I agree with everything Shelby just said. And I also want to bring some of my own concerns. I have some paperwork here, if the committee would each like a copy. The property in question does have covenants in force and applicable. Line item 12 on those covenants state that all building plans are to be approved by the control committee, who is Kurt and Kendra Ernst, addressed in line 11, and signed by at least one member of the control committee. This includes all residential garage and other outbuildings. I have a letter here from Kurt, signed by Kurt and Kendra Ernst, that says, "We, Kurt and Kendra Ernst, have not ever approved, nor will we approve in the future, any barn dominium type structures in Ernst Acres, second edition. It has always been our intent and continues to be our intent that the homes in this subdivision be single-family, stick-built structures, as the two current existing homes are." That would be my home and Beth and Jerry Metcalf's home. If the Renwick subdivision is approved and proceeds forward, we do not intend to approve any barn dominium structures anywhere within Ernst Acres, second edition. We've heard talk of covenants being placed on the new property. This is an example of covenants that are in existence that go directly against what is being proposed. From my perspective, I'm here to request that the petition for preliminary plat be declined for the reason that I just stated, as well as I have a concern about fire risk. They're putting that many homes in such a tight space that brings a fire risk. I personally had a fire a few months ago, and at that time, the responders were all strictly volunteer. I'd like to refer to the Reno County Comprehensive Plan on page 46, where it addresses that the rural areas of Reno County are provided fire protection services by 7 districts. All the districts rely on volunteers. They responded to my fire and they did great. I am not bashing them by any means, but a volunteer fire department's response time is, there's delays in a volunteer department. They were there was minimal manpower, and their equipment was relics. One of their relics would not start when they went to leave after fighting the fire at my house and got to live in my driveway for a while. I have a huge concern that they are not adequately prepared to fight a fire and defend this many structures in such a tight area. I would also have a concern about the wastewater systems, which I was really pleased to hear Darcy speak, because one of my concerns for that is that when I built my home in 2007, I did 3 separate test digs to try to do a septic system, and none of this, my soil didn't meet the criteria in any of those 3 locations, which was fairly expensive to do at the time, so I had to go with a lagoon. It was not my first choice, but that's what I had to do. If these properties don't qualify for septic, which I'm not sure that I'm understanding, maybe they do, but I have a sanitation concern for 6 lagoons in that small of an area, even 2 or 3 lagoons in that small of an area, for odor and just general health. Sorry, referring to my notes. So I would love to have some clarification, I guess, or some better understanding that all 6 of these properties qualify for septic systems. So, but the biggest issue that I have is that when we bought our property in 2007, they were 10-acre lots. So we bought our property and developed it with the assumption that we would have no more than 7, at the most, neighbors. adding 6 in is a substantial change from our expectation for rural living. So I just second what Shelby said. That's all I have, so I thank you for your time.
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
You're referring to this Ernst, these covenants regarding that. And does that legal description of the land that's covered by these covenants, does that
Yes, sir, it
get
was.
into these?
This was originally 3 10-acre sections. They were purchased from Kurt and Kendra Ernst, 20 of the acres, 2 of them were, and they are all 3 subject to these covenants.
And those include the proposed subdivision grounds? Okay.
A question, the fire, that's kind of a touchy issue here in Reno County. Was it a grass fire, a house fire, what?
It was a hay fire, and it narrowly, it was 30 feet from my horse
It
barn.
was a storage of hay that caught on fire.
Yes. Yes. Sir.
Question about the covenants. When were they written?
2006, I believe, and they have been renewed. They are currently valid.
For how much longer?
I do not, but there is every intention to renew them again.
They
we've
renew
been
every 10 years.
10 years, says Shelby.
Okay.
So, and that was one of the reasons that I purchased the property that I did. I wanted covenants. I wanted to be protected from people being able to bring in a trailer or, I wanted my property value protected. So I intentionally purchased land with covenants attached to it for that reason.
Before you go, one quick follow-up question on that. So it sounds like this was 3 lots, and that now they've been combined and then with the intent of being subdivided.
Yes, sir.
So we're going from 3 houses to 6, correct? Okay.
Yes, well, potentially 3 houses. 2 of them, 20 acres was owned by 1 person.
Okay.
So technically, we would have anticipated there being 2 homes because the Adams originally purchased 2 10-acre lots, so 20 acres.
Okay.
And then added an additional 10 later. So
Okay.
3 maximum, yes, we really anticipated 2.
And where is your home from here?
I am the R1 on the right, this next one over.
Okay.
One to the left.
Yeah, so I get to it.
Yes,
Right there, okay.
yes, sir. The only property, Beth and Jerry Metcalf own the 20 between my home and the proposed subdivision. So it's pretty close to home, literally.
Generally speaking, water runoff will go down the hill from your property to the southwest and onto this
Yes, sir, it has. We
property.
have also had water issues, though. Our sump pump runs constantly because the water table is so high, and we're at the top of the hill. So I can only imagine what this is going to look like from my personal experience. I actually had my sump pump fail 7 or 8 years ago and had water back up into my basement. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Okay. I believe you all have a handout that Mark passed around before the meeting began. That
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Jerry Metcalf,
I appreciate it.
and I'm going to deviate some from that to try to save time. I'm addressing this to the commission and others present. I've stated my name, and I am opposed to the proposed subdivision. I'm a retired farmer, southwest Kansas, left there 2007, went to Central Texas, bought property on a constant level lake, and being from southwest Kansas, seeing water every day was a real treat. While living in Texas, we continued to return to Kansas for business and family reasons, and then decided in 2015 to move back because more grandchildren are coming along. So my wife found a property at 9215 East Silver Lake Road listed for sale. We eventually bought the property, and it's almost on 20 acres, which appealed to us quite a bit, because we both grew up in the country in Kansas, in different parts of the state, however, but toward the western end. The house was on a naturally raised area, which provided a view of a little bit of Cheney Reservoir. And that was important to us because I could still see water when I'd get up each day. Because of my experience of, my profession was a dryland farmer in the geographic heart of the Dust Bowl of 1930s. So water is a big treat to me to have water available. However, the proposed subdivision would hurt the expectations that I and many others had in purchasing the property. It would change the feel of the country life, which my wife and I and other residents had experienced for many years. It would add a suburban structure at an area where it would be unusual and unsuited. We purchased a house which I believe was built in 2007 and have enjoyed living there ever since. Now I'm going to address the 10-acre tract. Ours is the R1, the widest one about midway. There you go. That's ours. And the house is basically where the cursor pointed to, right in the center of that 20 acres. Right there, to your right slightly, the dark, that's the house. So we have good buffers on all sides. And that is the highest point of the surrounding area there of all those tracts of land. So we have not had any water issues at our house because it was properly constructed. It's a walkout basement that faces toward the reservoir. So it's a two-story. So let's see. I think I've pinpointed where we are compared to the subdivision. Now the next tract to the left, the narrower strip, is 10 acres without a label on it there. And that's what I'm referring to now. That was up for sale when we bought our property by a lady who lived out of state. I was interested in purchasing the land, so I walked on the tract several times trying to decide where a person might build a house. The north end of the lot, next to Silver Lake Road, has natural drainage coming from the northeast. It comes from up to the upper right-hand corner beyond where the map goes on the section to the north and runs over 2 miles to get down to Silver Lake Road. And then it comes through a concrete bridge under Silver Lake Road onto the very northwest corner of our property, and then immediately over onto the 10 acres and goes into the first man-made pond. So the drainage came from the northeast, feeding a man-made pond. The center of the 10 acres has natural drainage originating from the Valentine, Angie just spoke, property and beyond to the north. That would mean there's a drainage about the center coming from the east across our property, south of our house in a low ground, and then onto the 10-acre property. It's a smaller tributary than the one coming under Silver Lake Road from the northeast. In concluding that the most suitable place, referring to the 10-acre property, would be in the southeast corner of this lot. However, in my opinion, quite a bit of dirt work would be required to have an all-weather road to that part of the lot. During a wet weather period and several days after, much of the 10-acre lot becomes marsh. And more roads and more paving means less places for the ground to penetrate and soak away into an area where there's shallow rock under the topsoil.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you're up on time. If you want to wrap up your thoughts, yeah.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'll give you a little bit of leeway here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I want you to refer to pages 51 of your comprehensive Reno County report and pages 54, and they state that subdivisions should be located in the radiuses of municipalities and cities, and are discouraging subdivisions in rural communities because of the impact on agricultural activities in part, and the change of the demeanor of the area where they are. And so basically, I refer to the covenants that Angie pointed out, and I strongly want to preserve those covenants intact. And then I would urge the commission to deny the proposed plat. Thank you.
Any other comment on this case? Okay, seeing none, does the applicant wish to rebut any statements made? You got just a couple minutes.
Certainly. Thank you for the time. We do acknowledge that there are private covenants on this property, and that those matters are private, and the issues of different styles of housing, that will be sorted out as time goes by, whether it's this type or that type. But again, I don't believe that's a subdivision requirement. That's more of a private matter. So I just thought I'd echo that and make sure we're all on the same page here. With regard to fire risk, I think we're talking about the potential for 3 additional houses than would be permitted here. I don't think that's a significant change in the pattern that's already existing out there. With regard to water issues, I know that's probably I would assume that's most of your concerns is how to handle drainage. I'll just share with you that MKEC is a seasoned engineering firm. We are, I would say, we're probably one of the premier drainage engineering firms in the region. We have experts in-house that we've helped thousands of, several developers help, develop thousands of homes, and we're going to help these individuals try to pursue their dreams of developing this property in a safe and appropriate manner. So I think, just with our support and their guidance on what they wish to achieve, we're gonna have a development here that everybody can be proud of, and will be a good contribution to this county. I think those are the main things that I wanted to address as far as general comments from the neighbors. So stand for any questions.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you. Staff, would you like to rebut it?
Real quickly, Mr. Chairman, I'll try to address some of the comments here. The subdivision and the zoning regulations, for that matter, we don't address views of a property, and so that's not something that we can regulate. As far as road infrastructure, these are 2 county-maintained blacktop roads, perfectly capable of handling any kind of additional traffic that may be generated from this development. The references to the JEO study and the ponds and the overtopping and the integrity of the embankment. Again, this is a private pond, and we don't regulate private ponds. we don't even require a permit for a pond, and so how that pond is constructed and maintained is strictly on the owner and the people that live around it. It's not something that the county is going to look at or be on top of. A lot of the JEO study with dam breach areas might be a great thing, and it'd be a good thing maybe for future property owners to know that, hey, if this pond would break, the water could be expected to go in this area, but again, it's not something that the county has in our regulations to be able to regulate anything like that. Lastly, I think I'd probably address the covenant situation here. It's mentioned in the handout that you received that this is called Ernst Acres, second edition. There is no recorded subdivision plat called Ernst Acres, okay? It's not recorded. They may call this division of 8 tracts Ernst Acres, but it is no subdivision. Now, it's not to say that the covenants don't have, a place or anything. I'm just saying that it is not a subdivision, okay, by any means. And covenants are not enforced by the county regulations at all either. That's the most important thing. Whatever covenants are put in place right now is strictly on that property owner to be able to enforce. Case in point, the property a little bit to the west, it's a what I would call a shed house or a shouse or so. It's a barn, with maybe living quarters in it. That's, maybe would be against their covenants, but it met my regulations at the time, so I issued a permit. Same thing with any kind of covenants that would be developed by Mr. Adams if this would go forward. He can have any type of covenants he wants to on that property. It is not going to be enforced by me. I always do suggest people that do that, if they're going to develop covenants, then maybe let me look at them so I can see if there's any conflict with the zoning regulations, so maybe we can, try and abate any kind of issues like in the future. For example, if you're not going to allow a shed with metal siding, for example. Well, my regulations say that you can have a shed with metal siding, but maybe he wants sheds with wood siding, for example. I would just like to inform the owner that I'm going to be issuing a permit for a metal shed, regardless of what your covenant's saying. It'd be up to that property owner to enforce his wood siding type shed. And so I always suggest that, but it's not a mandatory requirement or anything like that. But the point to take away is the fact that, that the county does not enforce private covenants on any property whatsoever. So with that, I would close, and if you had any other questions for me.
The question I should have asked probably earlier in the process, the road in question, how's it going to get built, and who is building it? And to our county, Don, I'm sure you're aware of what you're probably involved in the specification of this thing. How is that? Just kind of share for us that process and how that all takes place.
It's a long process, so we can't do anything until the final plat would be approved. Okay, so the way that process works is MKEC will do a design of that road, and we're just talking, 70-foot wide road, ditches, gravel, we're assuming here. What they're going to do is they're going to provide us those drawings, wherever they may be, along with a cost estimate to build that road. Okay, we're going to take that information, and then we're going to go to our third-party engineering company. We're going to give them those plans and that cost estimate. Our engineer is going to review those plans and that cost estimate to see what their cost estimate would be to build that road. If it's within reason, and what is reason, I don't know. Is it $5,000? Is it $10,000? We don't know. But if it's close, we'll say, okay, it's going to be X amount of dollars to build that road. Now, I can tell you if it's like $100,000 off, for example, now there needs to be a conversation between MKEC and our engineer to see why is there that large of a discrepancy. But basically, we're going to review it, they're going to accept it, and then that cost estimate, and then what's going to happen after that is he will have to provide the county a surety bond or a letter of credit acceptable to our county councilor and the county commissioners. And then he's going to give us the money that engineering estimate has to build that road. And then what's going to happen is the county is going to put that project out to bid, similar that we would put another road project out to bid for paving or a bridge project. We'll put it out to bid. Lowest contractor will get that bid for whatever cost estimate that is. We will use the applicant's money to pay to have that road built by that contractor. Now, the inspections of that will occur by county staff here. County staff will inspect that road to ensure that it's built in the right spot and it's built to those minimum township standards. That any money that's left over after the road is accepted by the county, then we'd be given obviously back to the applicant once the project is complete and all the bills have been paid, so.
What happens if the costs are higher than the estimates, the actual costs?
If the costs are higher, we would go back to that applicant. So there's not going to be any kind of, cost to the county taxpayer with this, So if for whatever reason, materials go up, then he'll have to provide that. Because, we don't know. I mean, cost estimates, are right now all over the place right now. We're relying on our engineers to give us the best guess, but in the end, it's a guess. And so if something happens on the as-built thing, but if it's under a contract, you think that builder of that road would honor that. But if there needs to be a change order, I assume Don, that's more Don's world, but, then they could come back and ask for additional monies. So it'd be a long process. Once the road is built and once it's accepted by the county, then at that point in time, we would be able to issue permits for structures. Not until that road is completely built and accepted by the county would we issue any kind of permits for anything.
And Mark, I think I'm correct, the culverts to the individual pieces of property would come at a later date.
Yes, the culverts would be done through the township, doesn't have anything to do with county permitting process or anything like that. No county policy, this could be strictly whatever the township requires and wherever they would like to have it placed. And so if it's, in a location that the township doesn't like for whatever reason, then that owner of that property would have to abide by whatever regulations are for the township.
Refresh my memory again. If this is approved, the developer can generate 6 lots for sale and for development. If this were not to be approved, the landowner could split into how many building sites? Probably.
He could go back to the way it is right now on the deeds, which would be 3.
It is an R1 district, so.
He's got 3 deeds to all of that property, so he could go back and get a permit on each one of those deeds, which would be a 10-acre site. So he could get 3.
He could sell 3 lots. By going the subdivision route, he can sell 6 lots.
Correct.
And the entrance would be off of Silver Lake Road.
And all the entrances would be off of Silver Lake Road instead of having all the entrances off of the new township road.
So the road's not a do-it-yourself project, a
Is not.
reputable
Not anymore.
contractor.
And we haven't done a
We
subdivision.
want to make sure it's done right.
Yeah, that's a drastic change from the way we used to do things.
Yeah.
When these lots were split off, there was no subdivision, review, and that's why you have 8 potential lots off of the county blacktop road. If that 80 acres is being developed today, under our current subdivision standards, I can guarantee you that you would not have 8 driveways off of Silver Lake Road, right there. That's why Mr. Adams is having to essentially build a new township road to serve the rest of those areas. And we would not allow that many driveways off the county blacktop or even a township road for that matter. The purpose of those roads is to move the traveling public, not to have a person develop their land off of the existing road. That's not to say that we would not obviously give you driveway permits for existing new roads or new roads that you're going to build, or if the way the plat is designed, maybe there's one lot that just can't get serviced by the new road, so then we could make allowances to allow an additional driveway. But by and large, the majority of the new development has to be off of that subdivision road that's created.
I just want to hear one more time that the covenants, the county has no responsibility or liability for whatever covenants there may or may not be. That's completely a civil matter?
Correct. 0 responsibility. You heard testimony in here that says that, and I think they're right, their memo says that they prefer or want stick-built homes. That's great. Stick-built homes I like stick-built homes too. My regulations say that you can put in barn dominium, shed house. My regulations say that you could put a modular house in on that property. I could issue a permit the next day for a modular house. The only regulation we would have would be on manufactured houses, which would require a conditional use permit. But any other type of housing is perfectly fine through our regulations. The fact that they say stick-built homes, that's wonderful. And I would, again, issue a permit for a stick-built house. But if somebody in this development came to me, or any of those other lots came to me today and said, yeah, I'd like to do a modular house, we'd be going through the process to give them a permit for a modular house. We don't care what the covenants say. And oftentimes, I don't regulate it, and oftentimes I don't get copies of it.
The covenant participants voluntarily enter those agreements themselves.
And it's up to either the people that own the property or the original owner, if you will, of the development to enforce that.
Or whoever is selling the properties to the new owners,
Yes.
to remind the new owners that those are in place.
Yes.
I have one final question. This one's probably more for Public Works. So it looks like that a 5-year event or greater than a 5-year event might overtop the road or the culverts on this new Adams Court. Does Public Works have any objection to creating any more roads out in the county that have that issue?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
I don't know which way the question is going to go. It might go to the applicant, it might come this way. To build a road, there's a lot of cut and fill. Where is the cut and where's the fill going to take? I mean, you probably don't know that exactly, but to build a road in that regard, to have some elevation change that I anticipate you're going to have, where are you going to cut the dirt from? Are you going to bring any outside dirt in to make the road? What are your preliminary plans with that?
Well, the short is, we haven't designed the road yet, so when we do design that, we'll engineer the road, and more than likely, we'll be pulling from soils on the property to balance the earth quantities. That's the most economical way to build a road. So that's the short answer. If we need to import dirt, certainly we'll import dirt. If we need to excavate some dirt to generate more, fill dirt, then we'll certainly do so.
So you don't anticipate any of the lots being impacted by the road construction?
I don't see it being an issue. I mean, it's something we'll have to sort out. That's a design issue that we'll get into.
We're looking at the crystal ball, right?
For sure, yeah.
It's just something it's rolling in the back of my mind. That, you're going to be moving dirt from point A to point B to make a road.
And that's kind of, I mentioned the iterative process. This isn't, just one of the steps that we have to go through, and certainly there may be a point of discovery that we need to readdress something, but we'll certainly do so with the appropriate authorities.
There's been some comments about the view, and as Mark said, we don't regulate the view, and I understand how people feel, and I don't want to sound like I'm a smart aleck, but if you like the view, you better buy it. I like the view outside of my house across the road, but somebody can build something over there, and there anything I can do about it unless I go over there and buy the land. So we can't regulate the view. We can't even really take that into consideration.
Does the commission have any further questions for staff or the applicant? Going once? Going twice? The public hearing is now closed. Acceptance or denial of a preliminary plat should be based off of compliance with current zoning and subdivision regulations. This is the time the planning commission will discuss the case and ask procedural questions of staff only. I guess to open our discussion, the chair will entertain a motion and we will discuss. comments, questions?
For a discussion?
I will take discussion.
You'll take anything.
Yeah, I'll take anything. Silence is golden, but I'd like to hear some input.
The more I have read about this, and we've been at this for more than 1 month, it's been a couple of months, the more I've read this and pondered this a little bit, the less enamored I am with this project. And these fine folks have done a lot of work and given a lot of thought to this proposal. I just see some obstacles here that are uncomfortable for me and potentially problematic down the road. May not be things that we are to be concerned about, but there are a couple of items that I find to be problematic. The drainage issues concern me. I think they could be dealt with. I grew up in a shallow water area on the farmstead in which I grew up, and drainage issues I'm no stranger to drainage issues. And, where I grew up, I think we've had about 5 of those 100-year rains in my lifetime, and that can be a problem. The shared pond, I don't know how you ever regulate that. The property owner said he probably could find a solution for that between the two lots 1 and 2, just by voluntarily, and that's fine, and he can probably do that throughout his active life period. If at some point down the road properties change hands, they all do sooner or later, and I think that has the potential to become more problematic if that pond still exists. So I have concerns about that. I think you have a shallow water situation to go with the drainage situation, and I don't see that we gain a whole lot by having 6 lots here over the potential of having three house lots there. So those items concern me. You can tell me where I'm wrong. My wife does it all the time.
Ken, I pretty well agree with you. I mean, I share basically the same concerns you do: drainage, water quality, the ownership of the ponds, if you will. I mean, those are all issues I see that although they may not be in non-conformity to subdivision regs, I see a lot of red flags and potential issues down the road and problems for the people who acquire those lots.
And it's not our concern to regulate who owns the pond or whether they're going to become Hatfields and McCoys and fuss over it and argue over it, but it just strikes me as being problematic.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I guess the comment I would make is, as we gather together, the 7 of us, I fully recognize the diversity in our expertise in trying to address this issue from many different sources. I'm not sure how I would vote if somebody made a motion that I'm not sure how I would vote. I am thinking to myself, gosh, I'd like to go out there one more time and look at it based upon the input that I've received today, both by the applicant and by staff and by the concerned citizens out there. And I'm not here to, at this point in time, to say, let's table it one more time. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just thinking out loud.
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree with any of these concerns, and I think of my past in the real estate lending area, and it seems like most every property has some negatives. And so it's up to the buyer, kind of buyer beware, to decide if that's an assumable risk or if it's not. And it does seem to me like the work thus far has met all of the county zoning requirements. And so that's where I'm at.
So I'd like to follow up a little bit on what Garth says. I do share the drainage concerns and the pond concerns that I think are fairly common in this group. I worry about the hypotheticals if we didn't approve this plat. I mean, a lot of these drainage issues don't go away if 3 houses are built instead of 6, hypothetically. It's still a low area, marshy area. But, that may or may not include the expertise of an engineer if we're not going through the formal planning process. And, in a scenario, do we want a scenario where we have 3 more driveways on a county blacktop instead of the proposed plat where we can control the traffic off on a township road? So I'm just kind of thinking out loud here.
I don't think the traffic's an issue. I mean, Silver Lake is not that highly traveled of a road, I don't think. 3 houses versus 1 drive, I don't think, they're 10-acre plots. If you had 3 of them, so you'd have 2 more driveways, I don't think that's really gonna impact, traffic at all. And to me, if they wanted to develop the 3 lots, you still have many more options on housing placement and placements for septics and water wells and whatnot than you would on, lots half the size.
Any other comments?
I'll do the honors and make a motion, if you're ready.
Chair will entertain.
I move that case number 2022-05, the request by Nicholas and Danielle Adams, requesting approval of a preliminary plat for the Renwick subdivision, a residential subdivision consisting of 6 lots, zone R1, rural residential district, be approved based on the information heard at this public hearing and the 3 conditions listed in the staff report. Further move to recommend granting a variation from the maximum block length requirement as discussed in the staff report.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Staff, call the roll.
Strand,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Seltzer,
No.
Macklin,
Yes.
Jorns,
No.
Martin,
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes. Preliminary plat.
We took you through, we went through a lot of hoops. Thank you for your patience and participation.
Thank you.
Ms. Daisy, thank you for your participation and your reporting. Appreciate it.
If it's, what's the board's wishes? If you want to take just like a 5-minute recess, stretch your leg, we've been sitting for just a little bit. All right, we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. All right, our next item of business is case 2022-06. It's the request by Lawrence Street Properties LLC for conditional use permit to establish a coffee shop with a drive-through window on Land Zone B1 Village District. Property is located at the southwest corner of East Red Rock Road and South Yoder Road at 9805 South Yoder Road. It was tabled at the July 21 meeting, so the chair will entertain a motion to bring it back to.
Mr. Chairman, I want, go ahead.
It's been moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor of taking this item off the table, say aye.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. All right, it's open for discussion. I'll remind the board that we have closed the public hearing portion of this. So it's at the stage where we need to discuss the factors involved for consideration for this project or for this proposal or application. So I don't know where I know where we want to start, but I just want to kind of get the lay of the land. Since I kind of mentioned that since the public hearing is closed, no new information was provided to you. So with that with that in mind, staff has tasked us, since they with the closing of the public hearing, tasked us with formulating the factors and also the conditions of the conditions for approval or denial, whichever the case may be. Am I speaking correctly?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Now with that, our staff is here for procedural questions, and that's pretty much the end of it. We can ask the question, but it'll be up to them whether it is a procedural or an operational towards this case, whether they can answer or not. Just to lay the ground rules.
17 to 22.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Can we ask questions about the new information that's been presented?
I think you can, yeah, because it was the reports that we had asked for to be added to it, yes.
Well, I was surprised by the vehicle count from 6 to 2. Maybe I wasn't surprised, but to see the actual number there, 2,700 vehicles in an 8-hour stretch, that's, if my math is correct, that's about 340 per hour or 5 to 6 vehicles per minute going through there. And that, I guess that's a concern to me, adding a business with potential for maybe not high traffic, but, for some traffic that's going to change the traffic flow on that road. And with no turn lanes, and I think those ditches are fairly pronounced there. There's a shoulder. I don't know enough about traffic control but that does cause me pause, seeing that number and doing the math of during those business hours, how many cars are going to be passing, and thinking how many are going to be turning in, and how many people are, especially in the early morning hours, coming up on a car that's waiting to turn, and I don't know what to expect there.
I'll kind of go one step further. Kind of keep in mind that a business just down Yoder Road with Carriage Crossing, granted they have a larger parking lot. That's a little bit different scenario when it comes to an eatery and that kind of thing. I'll grant you that, but it's still access to Yoder Road, kind of in a similar fashion of what the applicant is proposing, and they interact in that same time frame, and what I would say acceptable. I mean, the area isn't without accidents, but that's just Red Rock Road and Yoder Road. But the interaction there with the traffic, that it's a commuter throughway. I mean, it's evident by the traffic numbers. Yeah, it sure is. But I would say that since there are the other restaurant on that road is making it work, we just want to make sure we consider that piece of the puzzle too.
There's, I think, at least, I mean, you're looking at several other businesses actually right on or right next to, Yoder Road going through Yoder. You've got, the owner's other business, the solar thing. You've got the Yoder Market there. That's right off of Red Rock. The people coming down Yoder Road are going to turn off of there. You've got what do you want to call it, farm supply, or I don't remember what the name
Farm
of it
supply,
is.
yeah.
The one that has all the lawn chairs sitting out.
Yeah, that one.
And that's fairly new, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's, I don't know, it's been there a couple, 3 years, something like that. I think.
So I'm going to hit the pause for just a second. So really, we're looking at the location, whether the location is compatible, okay, in your mind, in your comment. Okay, so if we look at the compatibility of the neighborhood, what are your thoughts? Or is it, I mean, with Steve, to your point, we've got some businesses along there. I mentioned there's the carriage crossing, and of course we have Yoder feeds and the grocery store down just right across.
Grocery store, the solar.
Yep, all that.
His business right next to the
So
site we're looking at.
Believe in my opinion, the compatibility is there.
I would agree with that. It's an area that I guess in the 40 years I've been around has been increasing toward more of this kind of commercial operation.
And the way I see it is, if that entrance road off of Yoder Road, the entrance into the coffee shop is made appropriately and wide enough so that there's room for a car to sit there and wait to get out, and another lane for another car to get in there, I see it's a very workable, compatible system.
Okay.
Well, and I was surprised in the positive way as far as like traffic counts and accidents.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, on 9 and 5 years,
With what, 300 cars an hour? And only that many accidents in a short, in that amount of time.
The speed does reduce there, so that.
It does.
It goes down to 35 mile an hour.
But, to me, it's also, you worry about cars backing up. If you're looking at commuter traffic in the morning, people trying to get to work, it's gonna be self-regulating, because they come up and there's a line of cars there that's gonna keep going. They're not gonna stop and wait 10, 15 minutes to get through the line for a cup of coffee.
I drive right by McDonald's if that drive-through is full, and I know there's another one that I can go visit.
Yep.
I mean, it's self-regulating in that
It is.
regard, for sure.
Yep.
So, again, we kind of moved into the next piece of it, so the burden on the existing transportation and service facilities. That's kind of a broad term when it comes to all that's sewer, that's all, light roads, that type of thing. What are your thoughts? We kind of talked about, okay, is it gonna put another burden on? Harley, you mentioned having a wider driveway wouldn't probably remove the burden of
So
the
there's
business, but it
room for a car
would
to
alleviate.
wait to get out of there.
Two-way traffic.
Plenty of room for another one to get in.
Okay.
Two-way
So
traffic.
that would probably be a portion of the conditions that we need to write.
I think the other one is, fencing over on the west side of the property, because there's a house over there that blocks any, lights, sensing, landscaping or fencing or something that blocks the glare of lights in the mornings.
And in addition to that, I think that where there's some outside eating tables there and places to park cars, and you gotta assume some kids are gonna be coming and going, and then we need something there, and either a fence with a gate that opens and closes so that.
I don't know, Harley. I mean, you look at any fast food place in Hutchinson, McDonald's, Burger King, whatever,
Okay, you're right.
the building's in the middle of the parking lot.
and everybody drives
Everybody walks across the traffic lane to get in and out. I don't know if there's been many accidents reported, so.
You're probably right, okay.
There's probably more kids in those type of businesses than there will be in a coffee shop.
One of my concerns is that mitigation between traffic and pedestrians on it's, I'm going to draw because I'm a visual guy, so you guys can see what I'm doing here. This is going to be really crude, so please forgive me. This is not going to match up with your engineer drawing.
Permanent marker, is it?
Yeah, I've had that once.
I did that once.
Property.
Yeah, control room, please focus in the camera.
Yeah, for sure.
Will this be on the test later?
This is going to be on the test later. If we were looking, this, I drew it completely opposite here, but this is going to be north. Yoder Road.
Okay.
All right, so we have our relationship here. Red Rock, okay,
Yeah, okay.
is here. The entrance is here. In there, in one of their drawings that they provided, they had parking stalls. They had 3 here and 2 like this, and then kind of a green area, and then more stalls. I think there's, what, 3 or 4, maybe just 2 here. With this entry coming here and through the drive-through, the building will be somewhat in this corner, and then the drive-through comes around and wraps around.
Right.
I have the car interaction is a concern to me, and I'm not an engineer by any means, but you go into a parking lot that's congested, what's the first thing that starts going up under your collar? A little bit of heat. They designed this parking lot. Who designed this thing? We've all said it, okay? So you look at plans differently as you drive into different places, and I'm not saying that I'm an end all here. But what I'm thinking is with the drawing that was provided, it was probably with a narrower driveway. And they assumed that with a narrower driveway, these parking stalls would probably be viable. I'm afraid that with a wider approach, that these parking stalls are going to be a problem.
I don't think so, because I mean, if you look at, I'm looking at their original plat, because if you leave those, I mean, I think it had already taken these out, the 3 parking places out, if I remember right. Then you can move this, the entrance,
Right.
widen it this way, and you're not affecting the
That
parking.
should be big enough for 2 movements simultaneously, right?
What I was thinking, and I'm
They're gonna get-
I'm maybe way
No,
off.
they're gonna
I'm
get
standing-
trapped in here,
put my
aren't they?
back to the wall here, so you guys can see. What I was thinking is these would go away and
Yeah,
allow
they
a
cut back
longer
up, they-
queue
They're gonna get caught.
for their drivers. Take this out and put 2 here. That would still keep them above their minimum parking stall. I don't know, I'm not gonna dictate what's going on, but it's just something that just kind of brought in my mind.
Unless you put in concrete bumpers or something to separate, that something that can be done as the situation develops, is it not?
Layout, as far as
They
number
could,
of parking
but
spaces
see,
that were
with-
proposed.
Yes.
With,
Yeah, so they eliminated those
Parking lots
3
in
right along Yoder Road, didn't they?
Let's see, we got,
What was added, I have to look,
The-
what was
the,
added was the 2 diagonal ones.
yeah, it looks like the dumpster location was removed.
Yeah, they removed the
Dumpster was
dumpster.
removed, yeah, and they
So
put,
those 3
they
is.
put, added these 2 and left those 3 in there.
Yep.
Okay.
So just something to contemplate as we, just mitigating the vehicle interaction. And then kind of going along the same lines with the pedestrian interaction. There's going to be, by design, there's going to be an outside dining area. And good intentions are, if good intentions were the rule, we wouldn't ever have to put balusters up, we wouldn't have to ever put a fence mitigating it. But there's gonna be something that's gonna happen, and we want to look in our crystal ball a little bit and kind of prevent that. So I would like to see a condition in there, some sort of like a 3-foot vehicle retainment around that dining area.
Yeah. I mean, well, you look at Starbucks, for instance, they've got a wrought iron
Yeah.
type fence around where they have their outdoor seating.
But they're also, those balusters are also close enough.
Yeah.
The posts are, it's
Yeah.
decorative enough, but it's still got the posts
Yeah, I
close
mean,
enough to where
That's a
they,
design thing to be accomplished, yeah.
Okay, I have a question about this general topic.
Okay.
Kind of good, it's similar to the covenant issue. Is this really a liability that we have or that the county has to get into kind of the weeds as far as design elements? And
I don't,
I mean, we're not responsible for building a safe or unsafe structure.
No.
We can provide conditions as a part of the approval process.
right.
Yeah.
But
They
you're
will
right, we
approve it
don't
if
need
you
to
do
get
this,
into.
this, and this, yeah. You know, and those.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree, it's just that it seems like that's kind of getting out of our zone, and conversely, I would not want to be on the other end of that, and, well, you know, you guys said if you built it this way, we would never have, there wouldn't be a problem, and kerblooey.
Yeah.
I think that's between our applicant and his liability insurance carrier who would make recommendations for that. I don't mean to interrupt you.
I'm done.
Don, you have seen the traffic count now. Do you have any more thoughts about traffic safety and ingress, egress off of Yoder Road? And the second part of my question is, have we now ruled out any ingress, egress off of Red Rock, off the north?
I can't say that it would create a traffic issue. I mean, obviously, Yoder Road's a lot more busy than Red Rock is, but I just provided the traffic count, and like you say, there's been 9 accidents in that area.
In 5 years.
In 5 years, and you just saw the traffic count from the time they're going to be open. That's 9 accidents with Yoder Road in a 24 hours of 5,783, and Red Rock 776. So there's a lot more traffic than what you guys looked at. I just gave it to you for what their open hours are. So I'm not going to say that there's a traffic issue, and I'm not going to say that it's not a concern. It's just, like you said, there's other businesses coming off there. I think the restaurant, they're not as close to an intersection, but still, after saying that, I don't know that there'd be
The same
an
number
issue.
of cars would go, same number of vehicles would go past them.
Yeah.
They probably have more vehicles going in and out than the coffee shop would. He'd like to have that many vehicles come in and out, I'm sure, but,
I think parking might be a problem if they're as popular as carriage crossing.
Well, on the,
Our applicant's happy to see 7,000 cars going by there. If he could get 1% more to stop by.
on the back of the cover page, it says the applicant has decided not to pursue a Red Rock entrance.
I missed that, my apologies.
Thank you, Al. We talked about that. So as I was reviewing the factors, you know, the length of time the property has been vacant, I mean, it's obvious the owner of the property has intent of developing it into something because he's cleaned up trees, he's taken a house down. That really does not play into my decision as far as the length of time or anything like that. Anybody else have any comment to that effect?
No.
With kind of going along that same lines, the work he's done. Now, the work he's done doesn't really play into the next, I don't know, the next comment, and it doesn't, whether or not the property is suitable for the proposed use. If you look at the square footage and the preliminary plan that's been presented, it looks, I can't, outside of just seeing some parking issues and whatnot, that I can't say whether or not to address or not, right? Design, but I can't see any reason why that wouldn't be appropriate. Is there any comment?
I think it's a great use of the property and the benefit to the community. My heartburn is just jams a lot of activity on that corner, and I have some post-traumatic stress from an exact same scenario years ago. And it took a long time to work through that, and we had real estate to work with. So in this case, I'm not sure that would be the case, but that is not, I don't think that's my issue as someone sitting on this committee.
Mark, on the width of driveways, what would be a suitable width for two-way traffic? Don? Well, 70 feet? No.
That'd be excessive.
Excessive?
Yeah, I would look at that, and I would be generous on what I would allow there for two-way traffic. Now, it could be, I could see myself allowing up to 60 foot, something like that. And then, of course, that will be on the expense of them, and that will take a different type of pipe than what's normally allowed. But that, anything over 40 foot is a coated pipe, which that's what he would have to install. But I don't see that I think a 60-foot drive would be adequate there, and I would approve that.
So if we would require that as a condition, we need to put that in. Do we need to put, all right, let me rephrase. If we put that as a condition, how does the applicant get to that dimension? Is there a permit? Is there a process that they would need to go through? Help us through that piece of it.
You have to have an entrance permit, and I would not, as you as a board, say exactly what the length needs to be. That needs to be what's permitted by me through the permit process.
Gotcha.
And I will work with the applicant.
Okay, if we go like for a 40, 60-foot entry, how does that change the plans? Does that affect their use of
I don't think
three
so,
of these
'cause
parking
you could
spaces?
probably come over this way.
So we're assuming that everything would be just shifted to the north?
Basically.
Okay.
I don't know what the width is he's got on the drawing.
It's a 24-foot.
And really, kind of going back to Gar's point, we really aren't in it. I started the ball down the hill, and I probably shouldn't have. But the design piece of it is probably out of our hands.
Yeah, so
Just as part of the condition, I made some notes as I was going through this. The entrance or exit, I guess, egress would probably be a better term there. Should comply with all the requirements of Public Works and accommodate two-way traffic. Would that be a all right statement as a condition?
Say it again.
That the
Whatever
entrance.
Don says.
Yeah, that's basically what that means. Whatever Don says goes. But what I made notes on is entrance and exit shall comply with requirements of Public Works and accommodate safe two-way traffic.
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
I think so.
Okay.
And it seems like we should also address that fence
Yes.
Fence on the west side.
on the west side.
And then also a
Headlights.
fence around the eating area, if that's a concern.
Are we going to specify the type of fence on the west side?
Yeah, it needs to be screening.
It needs a screening, solid.
So
So like a privacy fence type?
now, yeah, but keep in mind that a privacy fence for instance, might be a row of bushes for me.
Yeah.
And it might be a 10-foot tall cedar plank fence for
I mean,
Steve.
basically,
We
the purpose of the fence is to block the headlights
Right.
from shining in, so.
But I think where I was headed was we need to specify what that fence will be and the height of it.
Typically, you get around a lot of business, you're looking at like a 6-foot fence, aren't you?
Typically, yeah, I'd say it's probably accurate. 6-foot wood or 6-foot vinyl.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah.
Solid fence, vinyl panels or something, yeah.
Yeah, not a chain link with slats through it.
Right.
Residential style.
Right. That would be on the west side of the property?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
From the setback line south?
Yep.
Or from the easement line south?
Probably the setback.
I would say from, you want the setback and then you probably want to go just to keep it in mind, the neighbor to the west probably doesn't want a 6-foot fence from right of way to right of way. It would probably be okay on the alley end to be 6 feet tall. But as you go towards Red Rock Road, you probably want to go to the setback
But
at
that's where the
6 feet.
headlights are gonna be, is towards Red Rock.
Right.
Yep, then.
When they come around that
Right
curve.
around the
Right.
corner.
They're
But
gonna be
then,
shining over to the house there.
then you could put a 4-foot, we could indicate a 4-foot fence from that point
Would
on.
that be adequate for the purpose, though?
Most
The real
cars.
objective is to keep the headlights for a customer.
Yes.
From shining
Yeah,
into
into the
that house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, do we have to give a dimension, or can we just say adequate to protect the,
That's a good.
Adjacent property owner.
That's a good question. Mark, what can we specify?
I would rather have as specific as you can, so I know and the owner knows what he needs to do to be in compliance with the conditional use permit. When you say just put up an adequate fence, well,
Define
adequate fence, to Mr. Horace might be totally different than what I think an adequate fence, is. And so I think
I would say
you would need to be
4 foot from the
specific,
property line to the
you
setback and 6 feet from the setback to the alley.
something like that, made
Solid
out of
residential.
commonly used fence material or something to give me an idea of what this board is wanting to do, so I can enforce it. That's the biggest thing you gotta keep in mind, interpretation and enforcement.
Okay, that was part of my notes too. Here's what I wrote. These are just my notes, so it's up for debate. Screening shall be installed along the adjacent property line to the single-family residence to be no less than 6 feet tall from setback to setback and 4 feet from right-of-way to the setback line. Yeah.
Is that
Fair
doable?
Yeah, I
enough?
like it.
Sounds good.
The neighbor has a really nice fence there, and she's fairly finicky. What if she doesn't want that, and she likes her decorative fence? I just don't want to be forced to do something that makes her mad.
Let's put the option.
There we go, thanks.
Okay, the option for the 4-foot fence, if there is a fence installed from the setback to the right-of-way, it needs to be a 4-foot fence, 4-foot solid fence.
Well, or can you make it say, well, here's what we recommend. However, if the adjacent homeowner desires, then they can just eliminate the fence.
I don't know how much gray we can write into that.
Well, I mean,
I would rather
If she
not.
doesn't want a 6-foot wood fence alongside of her property, then.
but that could change with the property owner too.
Right.
Well, yeah, but, that's down the road, it's in compliance when they build it, so.
Mark, how would we write in that variable if I hate putting that gray area in there, but how would we write that if we would, it would be the condition would be right of way to right of way, a 6-foot fence with the option of the property owners to an additional 4-foot fence from Red Rock right of way to the setback line. How would you write that in there to where that, God, I hate having that word option in there because that leaves so much
Well,
or do we just leave it out and let the applicant and the adjacent homeowner
Fight it out.
Do that.
Is there an existing fence there? There is along the east side of her property.
It's a decorative vinyl.
Okay.
So
So that's what I would just hate to cover it up and then have her.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. is
Okay, so there is some.
You've got a 6-foot wall on her fence.
If you wanted to, you could do a signed agreement between Mr. Horace and that property owner of come to an agreement on adequate screening.
Yep.
You could leave it at that.
Yep.
And then you're not, if she doesn't want another fence right there, then that's fine. It doesn't say anything about the existing or the future property owner, but then if this is approved, then the future property owner is gonna know that there's a coffee shop right there. So you could just make it a signed agreement between that property owner and Mr. Horst.
She may want to put a gate in her fence so she can just get
Stick to
over the
gate.
coffee shop.
She may not care, she may think that's not an issue.
Is she not concerned about the headlights shining on her house, or have
Ken,
you approached that with her?
I'll remind the board that we can't ask the applicant any
Oh, we
questions at this
can't,
point.
well, son of a gun.
Yeah, I hate to be a hard case, but that's kind of,
Getting awful picky in
I'm
old age, you
getting
know.
picky. Yeah, every time I lose a hair, I get more picky.
We don't have any objections from the west landowner. No. Do we? So-
No.
So how do we want to, what
I
is the
would,
board's
I would say
desire?
that as far as the screening on the west side would be per agreement between, Mr. Horst and the property owner to provide adequate screening per their agreement somehow.
Well, is there any applicable county regulation about visual screening, or is this just an effort to make sure the county has a good reputation on these projects, or?
Not a county project.
Well, but we're approving it, so, I mean, if we approve it with no fence, are we violating
Doesn't
anything?
have any city ordinances, they're not a incorporated city.
I think where we're at, I think the way we're leading is between setback to setback, we need to specify what that looks like. And then, to your point, any additional would be per agreement between adjacent landowner. What are your thoughts about that one?
From, you were saying from south to north.
Yep, and then this distance from here to here would be just whatever.
Yeah.
Or we could just leave it alone, and then it's gonna be a relationship between, we stay the heck out of it.
That's,
I kinda like to stay the heck out of it.
Well, I recommend we stay out of it and let it just be.
She has an existing fence that she likes, and then it's between her and Mr. Horst. I have a feeling that he would do the neighborly thing,
So, Article 10-104, under design standards for the parking regulations. Screening shall be installed along any property line adjacent to or adjoining any single-family residence, two-family residence, or multifamily residence to eliminate the passage of light from vehicles. Screening along side yards shall not extend nearer to the street than the front yard setback line. The installation and maintenance of required screening shall be the responsibility of the landowner whose land use necessitates the screening.
So you're basically saying.
And I think that's our answer.
So setback to setback is to the letter of our law.
Yeah.
The rest of it is let them arm wrestle it out.
Yeah, if there's anything,
Elsewhere.
that front portion.
But in a lot of our regulations, this board has the option to potentially waive that requirement if you so choose.
Thanks, Mark.
too. Because you remember, you waive other regulational requirements such as paving. When we got developments on a dirt road, other developments on a blacktop road, sometimes you will waive the paving requirement. We've done it about every single time.
So we could waive it pending approval of the adjacent property owner.
You could potentially just waive it.
Just waive it.
Without her approval.
Yeah.
Waive the screen completely?
Yep.
If you
No, I don't think so.
You may not want to go that route.
Sorry, I kind of jumped my mouth open before my brain was in gear. But I think that would be a mistake. I think we need to have some sort of screening, at least in our conditions.
I think that you need to have a plan or whatever, that there's the proper screening, and you don't have to have that if we see signed agreement between the the landowner and him. So I wouldn't just waive everything, then all of a sudden there isn't any agreement. We need to see that agreement before anything's waived. And then if that agreement doesn't exist, then you need to have a screen.
Okay.
Saying that
That's
we
just-
require setback to setback screening, however, if this could be waived, per an agreement between the
If both landowners agree,
Yeah, something to that effect.
if both landowners agree in writing that such screening is not necessary.
Sure. Is something like that enforceable, Mark?
The agreement with the other property?
Yes.
Oh, sure. I mean, if he has a written agreement.
I just want to make sure that we're not pigeonholing you into a place where it's going to be.
Well, absent any agreement, it would just default to the current regulations, right?
Right.
There you go.
So we're,
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
so we're just gonna say,
You gotta put the
you
screening
can
up
waive the
unless he
existing
has-
regs.
There will be screening unless
Yeah.
both parties agree not to.
In writing.
Yep. Okay.
Right, okay.
And Mark read the regulation to us.
Okay. We got the driveway, we got the fence on the west.
Let's, I'm just kind of going down the line, there's 12 factors, right? 10 factors, excuse me.
With this land.
I just went down the line when I was making my notes.
Yeah.
Whether it conforms to conforms to or further enhances the comprehensive plan. And here's my note to that one. The comprehensive plan can be interpreted in many ways. The intent of the document was to promote development within cities in the county. And I believe this proposal embraces that spirit. That's how I look at it. So the comprehensive plan really does, for me, it fits into that. The next factor is whether the relative gain to the public health and safety and general welfare outweighs the hardship imposed if CUP is, conditional use permit is not approved. That's a hard one because you got to you're looking at both sides of the fence now, not just regulations, but really, I didn't see that there's any significant hardship outside of the applicant's investment to date. They're not losing their land. They still have that investment. They just have, they may, if we choose to deny this, they just have to go back to the drawing board. So there's not any significant hardship there. And so I don't think there is any. That's how I feel about that. Is that consistent with the way the board is feeling?
Yes.
Okay. Number 9 was whether the proposed CUP, if it applies to all conditions upon approval, is made contingent, will not adversely affect the property in the area. And I that I had to go back to the public hearing phase and garner some of that information back. We've talked about the separation of vehicles and pedestrians. That was one of the concerns that was brought up. One of the concerns was the type of fence. We visited about that. We've discussed that, so we're really in pretty good shape there. The width of entrance, we visited about that piece of the puzzle. Parking stalls, we're not going to get into the design piece. We're going to leave that up to the applicant, but with the design of the new entrance, I'm sure that's going to change things, the dynamics somewhat. I had to go through those pieces for me, and that's how my mind thinks. I entertained some discussion of whether or not we're in the right.
I think
going
we've
down the
hit
right path.
most of the hot points on your list, with the exception of coming up with, any protective barrier fencing
Yep.
around the outdoor eating area.
Yep.
And I don't know what, probably need to do something, make that a condition as far as, I don't know what you would require, because it's like a wrought iron fence that's going to be protecting the car coming through there. It's just decorative and provides physical separation. You know, but if you're looking for something with vehicular protection, you gotta, putting in some concrete filled pipe or, cement things, which are
I
gonna
think just something to call everybody's attention. Wrought iron fence is all that would be adequate in my mind.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be continuous, needs an opening so people
Well,
can
yeah, I
walk.
mean,
Right,
just
right.
on this design, I'm just looking where
Something
to
to
go
call your
around
attention.
where the tables
Hey,
are.
there's cars here and you're over here.
And possibly maybe down the side along that drive down to where the stairway is. If that's an outside stairway to the upper level.
Scribbling here.
Are we gonna keep our request relatively high level? Just, we need to have something here.
Yes.
And then leave the details to the pros.
Yeah. All right, I wrote one of the, as this condition for the fence, install fence to contain outside dining area and continue to protect the stair entrance. I don't know what that word would be. I think we probably ought to specify height.
4 foot.
Because we don't want, we don't want a 2-foot vinyl plank and have a young child jump right over it.
I think a 4 foot.
Well,
Fence with 6-inch
so
spacing.
now I'd say, just say minimum, install a minimum 3 foot, install a minimum 4 foot, so then if the applicant finds a 5 foot fence, he can put a 5 foot fence up.
3 foot, does that?
Set the minimum and then let him determine what he wants to do.
Yeah, I think that'd be absolute minimum.
Yeah. That works.
Okay. Are there any other conditions that we need to discuss for this? I'm at the end of my list. I hope you guys have done a little bit of homework, see it.
Oh, I think, I don't know if there's anything we need to discuss about outdoor lighting.
They indicated in the public comment piece that they had some lighting that was going to be installed on the building.
Okay, nothing in the parking areas.
Nothing in the parking areas.
And
Well,
generally-
they're really only going to be open 6 a.m. to 2 p.m.
It's a daytime
so-
program.
6 a.m.
So I get it. In the wintertime it is.
Yeah.
But I think that'll be,
Okay.
I don't know that we need to get into that.
Okay. Okay.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I don't think the lighting's any of our business as long as it's not shining in the neighbor's window.
Yeah.
And they don't have it.
If it's dark, people won't go in. If it's lit up, they will.
For sure.
Well, they might want to have some lighting on a sign, even when they're closed.
Yeah.
Well, there's electronic sign regulations, right?
Yes.
Mark?
Correct.
Okay.
Minimal, but yes.
How about the noise from the drive-through? Which normally we don't think about that because we're sitting in our car, but if you are not in your car and you're near the drive-through, it can be loud because there's noise and, the volume is designed to be a little louder so that you can hear. So I don't know the system, if there's going to be a order station and a pickup, or if it's going to be order at the window, but I know noise can be an issue.
From what the design looked like that was proposed last month, it's just going to be a drive-up window.
Yeah, but there'd possibly be an order station before you get to it, just like you would at Starbucks or something.
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking about the noise affecting the neighbor?
Well, if you have an order station, you're talking through a microphone, which is projecting the employee's voice into the car.
But if you look at where their queue is for their drive-through, if they're, here's ifs and buts, right? We're looking a little bit further into design than we probably should again. But if there's an opportunity for it, that station could be either facing the Yoder Road area corridor, or it would be facing Red Rock Road. So I don't know that it would be, I hear you, it'd be, rather than it facing the residents across the way, I could see where that would be at 6 a.m. I'll take a caramel latte, double this, double that. I take it black, by the way, so I don't even know how to order those things.
Even if it's on the north, it's loud.
Yeah, it is gonna be loud.
And I don't have a feel for the distance between where it might be and the resident.
I don't know that we've got I think that will be a concern that the applicant will have to work out. I'm politely saying, I hear you, Garth, but I don't think we got to deal with it.
Another HOA thing there.
Another HOA thing. I wrote a proposed potential motion, and I'm just going to read it for this, and it doesn't have to be that way, but just so you can hear what that motion might sound like. I'm not trying to sway anyone in any direction by any means, but an approval motion could sound like I move that the case number 2022-06, request by Lawrence Street Properties for a conditional use permit to establish a coffee shop with a drive-through window on Land Zone V1, Village District, located at the southwest corner of East Red Rock Road and 9805 South Yoder Road, be approved based on the factors and conditions of approval listed above and as discussed at this hearing. I say that because I read that because I want you guys to hear if there's something that needs to be added to it, that by design, because I'm telling you, I scribble this stuff down, and my penmanship is probably, and my grammar is probably not always exact and correct. And if I'm missing something that one of you might say, well, doggone, we usually say this in that motion. That's why I read it to you.
I'm on the verge of saying, I second your motion.
Well, the chairman can't move, so I'm gonna step
That's an
back.
error. The chairman can move.
What's that?
The chairman can move.
Well, I think I've abstained just because I didn't want to.
Well, I'll take a stab at it then. And no,
If you would.
Yeah, let me look at what you're reading. Now, the conditions we're talking about are the screening for the fence.
I'd like to have the specifics on those, though.
Okay.
Gentlemen, please.
That's what I'm trying to.
Okay, I'll read down what I have scribbled down here.
What specific factors, I mean, if it's 1 through 10 as listed in my staff report, that's fine.
Yes, it's 1 through 10 as listed in the staff report. We've reviewed 1 through 10 as listed in the staff report this evening. And the conditions would be screening shall be installed along the adjacent property line to the single-family residence to be no less than 6 feet tall unless waived per landowner, and applicant written document is what I have written here.
Yeah.
Written agreement as provided to staff. The second condition is entrance and exit shall comply with requirements of the Public Works Director and accommodate safely two-way traffic. That one is almost as written there. Parking lot and drives to be paved consistent with adjoining roads. I have also written in these conditions, and probably for discussion here, that the applicant also needs to provide staff with an updated site plan once the entryway is decided upon.
Say that
And
again.
then provide the staff with an updated site plan once the entryway
You know,
is.
but the driveway, entryway,
Oh, the driveway entryway.
not the front door of the building.
Yep, that's the entrance off of Yoder Road. Entrance and exit shall comply with requirements to the Public Works Director and accommodate safely two-way traffic. Number 5, we really haven't talked about, I put in my notes, and then maybe we can talk through this too, but I also did a catch-all. You know, it's kind of like in a job description, all duties as assigned by the boss. This is provide staff with copies of any applicable county, state, and federal permits needed to operate the business as planned.
Do we need that?
Well, if there's any food that's going to be served there, I believe there's going to be some other permits that are going to have to be obtained.
Yeah, and do we need to see those?
Well, that needs to be a condition. We don't need to see them, but that needs to be a condition of approval. So Mark has them on file. We've had to do that in the restaurant we did down southwest of Yoder, we did those types of things. We need to have those on file.
Things I learned here.
And the last, Mark, I know you've been scribbling fast here.
Trying.
You and I can review these if we need to. Number 6 is install a fence to contain the outside dining area and continue to protect the stair entrance. And this fence will be a minimum of 3 feet tall. I have 6 total conditions.
Install the fence to contain the outdoor dining area
Yep. And continue to protect the stair.
and protect the stairwell.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And the fence will be a minimum of 3 feet tall.
Go back to number 1, screening shall be installed on the west property line at least 6 feet tall unless
Waived per landowner written agreement as provided to staff. Landowner/applicant.
Okay.
Yep. Adjacent landowner, you may need to put adjacent in there. I don't know how you want to write that to where it sounds,
So then, if I may, Mr. Chairman, then question on number 4, the updated site plan. The only thing that's changing is potentially the extension of the existing driveway.
Right.
And you want a new site plan?
I guess, is that a requirement for your files? So you have, so if someone comes, heaven forbid that they find out that this doesn't work and they sell it to someone else, and do you need to have, does there need to be a document in your files that said, yep, we talked about a wider driveway, this is how it was specified, this is per drawing? Because if you have, I guess, the way I see it, if you go with the drawings that we have now, it has a narrow driveway.
But we've already covered the driveway, per Public Works requirement, allow for two-way traffic.
Well, then
I didn't, but I guess I didn't know if they needed an updated site plan drawing to reflect that.
That's up to them.
I don't think we need it. By putting it as a condition, then I really can't get this on the agenda for the commissioners if the desire is to approve this, until I'd have the updated site plan. If the only thing that you're wanting to change is the driveway.
Right.
Now, if you were changing parking stalls or location of the building, that'd be one thing. If you're not changing the parking stall alignment or so, and you're only changing the driveway, I would probably just leave that out.
Okay.
Because more than likely, it's just gonna be an extension of the
I
existing
wrote that in there
driveway.
because I didn't know if you needed any just to make sure your files, when you opened up your file and you looked at it, it reflected exactly what was happening on the dirt. That's the only reason I wrote that in there.
Yes, I do need that. If there's something on the plan that's changing, like parking stalls, orientation or location of the building.
So
If
we
it's
don't
just the
need-
driveway,
we don't
then I
need that
don't,
as a
I don't
condition.
care. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Well, we'll strike that as a condition.
Okay, if that's,
Yep.
yeah.
So we have 5 conditions.
So then the plan that was submitted last July will be the plan that potentially will go forward.
Yes.
Okay, Steve, do your thing.
Let me see your notes.
Want to see my notes?
All right, see if I can put this in proper form here. I would move that case number 2022-06, the request by Lawrence Street Properties LLC, requesting conditional use permit from Reno County zoning regulations to establish a coffee shop with a drive-through window on a parcel of land zoned V1 Village District be approved, subject to the 5 conditions discussed at this meeting.
And the factors.
And the 10 factors.
And the 10 factors discussed, okay.
Yes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? No. Staff call the roll.
Strand? Yes. Schaefer?
Yes.
Seltzer?
Yes.
Macklin?
Yes,
Dorn? Martin?
Yes.
Goodson?
Yes. Motion carries. We'll come and have coffee soon.
Open for the fair?
Give you about a year. Next Yoder days, right?
McDonald's can put them up faster than that.
Be open by state fair.
Oh, my goodness. Is there any other business staff has for this board?
I do not have any other business.
Does the board have any further business that needs to be brought forth? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?